I love Count Yorga. He is just one of the flyest vampires I know. A lot of you have said that part 2, The Return of Count Yorga, is just as good, if not better, than the original. Is this really true? Well, that's what we're gonna get to the bottom of today. This room that you are seeing is my bedroom. We have revamped it, and it's got a 70s occult vibe to it. So I am loving it. It's a work in progress. It's not done yet, but I thought this would be a great place to talk about vampires today. Yes, today we are going to be talking about The Return of Count Yorga. And before we dive in, I just want to let you know that while I am going to be talking about several of the events that happen throughout the film, I'm not going to be giving away the ending. So if you haven't seen it, you should be okay. Oh, and like I always say, these 70s vampire films are kind of formulaic, kind of predictable. So you sort of know what you're going to get. So this is my copy. This is a Scream Factory Blue from Brian. Thank you so much. And of course, I do have this blue of Count Yorga Part 1, also from Brian. So thank you, Brian, for changing my life by giving me these discs. The Return of Count Yorga, which you also might hear me call Count Yorga 2, was written and directed by Bob Keljan. It was released in 1971. It stars, of course, Robert QUARRY as Count Yorga, Yvonne Wilder as Jennifer, Mariette Hartley as Cynthia, Roger Perry as David, and Philip Frame as Tommy. Also, shout out to Craig T. Nelson, who a lot of us know. I personally recognized him as the dad from Poltergeist. This is his first feature film. He's playing Sergeant O'Connor. He's playing one of the many cops in the movie. And here is your synopsis written by me. Count Yorga has returned, and somehow so has his assistant, Bruda. This time, Yorga sets up shop in San Francisco, in a castle nearby an orphanage, where he begins to cultivate a slew of minions. However, his business as usual is interrupted when he falls in love? I want to go ahead and lay this out there. I have watched this movie 2 times now, and I have a hard time with this one. I do not love it like I love Part 1. I really want the best for this film, but it just doesn't do it for me. But let's break it down. Let's talk about it. Whereas Count Yorga Part 1 took place in LA, now we are in San Francisco. I love the 70s California vampire thing. I think it's so cool. And like I mentioned, the primary location from the onset here is an orphanage. But it's very strange. It's like the orphanage actually has nothing to do with anything. So one of our first scenes is there's like a pageant at the orphanage. So there's a bunch of kids singing. And that's pretty much the only time we see kids in the movie, except for Tommy, who is the main character. But other than that, you'll see like a couple of kids later on, but there's just not kids. The orphanage is not really part of the story. Also here at the setup, there is a weather phenomena happening called the Winds of Santa Ana. And all the people in the area are pretty superstitious about these winds. They are kind of afraid, creeped out by these winds, basically. And I actually looked these up, and this is a real thing. The Winds of Santa Ana are a real thing, which is pretty cool. Oh yeah, and they're also called the Devil Winds. In this opening scene at the orphanage pageant, there are all these kids singing, and then there are all these adults. There are probably more adults than there are children. And they're all wearing costumes. It's like a costume party. We see our leading lady character, Cynthia, and she is sitting in the audience and just crying. Just like, bleh, like tears running. And she gets up and kind of like walks off to the side, and she's muttering to herself about the stupid winds and how the stupid bridge is out. And it would lead you to believe that being stranded in some way is going to be a factor in this film. Like maybe this bridge is washed out and nobody can come in and nobody can leave or something. But this is pretty much the last we hear of that. Anyway, all of that was just kind of to lay out the setting for you. Even though they kind of set things up that they don't actually end up using. like the bridge, like the orphanage, I don't know. But we do get a few city shots in San Francisco, the same way that we got some city shots of LA in Count Yorga Part 1 that are kind of shot from a distance. So that was, it's nice to see a little bit of the city, but generally San Francisco's not really, doesn't really come into play. Now I'll give you a little bit of story context here. So like I said, we have this pageant at the beginning, and when Cynthia goes off to cry by herself, continue crying by herself, that's when she meets Count Yorga. He has just wandered in, and he fits right in because this is a costume party and he's dressed like a vampire. But yeah, Cynthia works at this orphanage. And Count Yorga has moved into the castle next to the orphanage, so he's coming over to like introduce himself. Cynthia works here, and a lot of these adults that are there work there as well. It seems like Cynthia's whole family works at the orphanage. Maybe it's a family business or something. It's all a little weird because I don't think they live at the orphanage. Because one of the kids was saying, "I'm scared, can I sleep at your house tonight, Cynthia?" And she's like, "Okay." So I don't know who stays at the orphanage with the kids. A bunch of the staff sleeps at Cynthia's house. Anyway, Count Yorga slips out of the party once the adults discover that one of the staff members is laid out in the hallway and seems to have been bitten on the neck. So Count Yorga's just like, I'm gonna go. So cut to that night. We are at Cynthia's house, and a whole bunch of other people live there with her too, and you never quite understand like who's who. There's just like a huge group of adults living there, and also little orphan Tommy is staying there as well. And none of them can sleep because they're all freaked out by the winds of Santa Ana. And I do like that element in the story, that just these winds kind of fill people with anxiety, like there's something coming. I think the foreshadowing of it all was really a nice element. The winds are affecting them kind of like a full moon might affect someone, like how they say a full moon affects someone. But unfortunately, the Santa Ana winds are only used in the setup and they're never revisited again. Anyway, let's move on. They are right to be scared because actually something is coming. A horde of female vampires in nightgowns. Yep, that's right. One of my favorite things. And these ladies break in and just slaughter everybody. It's a pretty powerful scene. There's a lot of screaming and hand-to-hand combat. So these ladies, as per Count Yorga's command, pick up Cynthia and carry her over to the mansion because guess what? Count Yorga is in love. Long story short, here he is gonna try to make her fall in love with him, I guess. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this seems a little out of character for Count Yorga. It's giving kind of desperate. It's giving kind of impulsive, right? Like, it doesn't seem like something he would do. And he doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have any kind of plan. He just, like, brings her to his house and hopes that she'll stay there and hopes that she'll fall in love with him. He's not even doing anything. So Cynthia's already engaged to somebody. We'll talk about him later. But between Yorga and Cynthia, like, there's never even a sprinkling of chemistry. And back at the orphanage, a bunch of cops swoop in on the scene to try to figure out what happened there. So now let's turn the page and let's talk about the characters a little bit. With this film, there's not like a centralized focus when it comes to the characters. Like, there's not necessarily a main character. The film feels decentralized, if you will. They set it up to make us think that Cynthia's kind of the main character here, but all that kind of shifts once the cops enter the film, and a lot of it is just following the cops around after that point. The perspective is basically like passed around between them, and that didn't really work for me. When these cops were introduced, you don't realize like they're about to be the main character and that you should actually know who they are and stuff. You know, there's just like so many of them and they all look the same, and actually like some of them are cops and some of them aren't, and they're all dressed like civilians, and I'm just confused. I'm like, wow, look at all these white men. How am I supposed to tell them apart? But this is where I should tell you that one of the guys in this group of investigators is played by Roger Perry. He is playing David, Cynthia's fiance. Roger Perry was also in Count Yorga Part 1, playing a totally different character. So he's back again, but playing someone else, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, now he's a psychiatrist or psychologist, one of those. And he's just really invested in this case because it's Cynthia's family and stuff. So he's running around with the cops. Let's talk about Cynthia. She's gorgeous. She's very likable. But, you know, like I said, you think that she's going to be a main character and that you're going to get to know her and like get to know things about her and like maybe some backstory and stuff. But that doesn't actually come to fruition. She just is just a pawn, basically. Count Yorga needed something to fall in love with, so there she is. So here's actually what I wrote in my initial review of this film. The characters are disposable, yet the focus didn't seem to be much on Yorga at all. I feel like he had a lot fewer lines than he did in part one. The film seemed to me to be more about this large group of bland-looking men investigating the disappearances and supposed murder of a family. The performances are good, but the characters themselves are just kind of blah. Like they're, I don't want to say lazily, that sounds so mean. This is the only word I can think of. They're like lazily written. We don't get inside anyone, not even Count Yorga. And with that, let's talk a little bit more in depth about Count Yorga here. Robert QUARRY is brilliant, in my opinion. His poise is powerful. His gaze is precise. In every single movement, like even micro movement, it feels just very calculated and measured. There is this rumor that Vincent Price said that Robert QUARRY can't act, and I just cannot agree whatsoever. I don't know where that came from. Count Yorga is a fashion icon as always. He is an inspiration to me. Oh, and also, we're just gonna give him the credit for this, but his nightgown vampire girlies, their fashion is great too. They're wearing very shiny nightgowns, which is super fun. All different colors, of course. And like always, Robert QUARRY as Count Yorga in this film is quite charming. He's intelligent, collected. He's always walking around so slowly, like he's never in a hurry. He's never worried. I love just the unbothered and very distinguished nature of Count Yorga. But, y'all, A, my complaint is that we don't get enough of him, but B, he is not menacing in this movie. It is so strange. In Yorga Part 1, we got a lot more variety in how he would stalk and kill, you know? And then now in Part 2, he just does the same thing every time he attacks somebody. It's weird. He has his arms outstretched, he has his face all snarled, and he's running at someone like this, and it's in slow motion, and yeah, he looks scary or whatever, but we're just watching him run slow motion down a hall, like, and that's how he gets everybody. I feel like Part 1 was a lot scarier. Now, how did Count Yorga come back? That was my question. No, that was not explained. But guess what? It is explained on the back of this DVD. The winds of Santa Ana brought him back. Okay. I need to talk a little bit about how Count Yorga Part 2 was written. Was clearly written assuming that the audience had watched Part 1. There's a lot of lore they establish in Part 1 that they don't reestablish for you in Part 2, and it seems like they're assuming that you already knew that stuff. For example, just this idea that vampires are like 10 times more intelligent than humans, 10 times more perceptive than humans, all of that kind of stuff. They don't even tell you any of that. They're like, they know. Fun fact, in this movie, there's a little scene of Count Yorga watching TV, and he is watching The Vampire Lovers, and he's watching it in Spanish. And they don't really like mention this, but once I thought about it, I was like, oh, well, he's probably watching it in Spanish because he knows Spanish, because he's like a super genius. Yet that's something that the film does not share with you. And maybe it was in there and they had to cut it out, but like those are the kinds of little details about him as a person and about like the vampire lore in this film that they just skimmed over. Now, like I said in my Count Yorga Part 1 review, is I love Count Yorga because he is interactive. Part of the joy of these movies is watching him talk to people, watching him talk to mortals. And unfortunately, they Christopher Lee him in this movie because we don't get to watch him interact that much. I want to talk to you about the best parts of this movie. The cast. I enjoyed the cast. Even the kid, he was kind of like a weird actor, but it also worked. It made it creepier. And of course, like basically Robert QUARRY coming back as Count Yorga is enough to make the film worth it. But I did like how everybody else was cast as well. The interiors and the fashion, well, we already talked about the fashion, but the interiors in this film are just beautiful. Gothic with splashes of red. Oh, and then the freaking living room in Cynthia's house, I just feel a strong sense of ownership over that room for some reason. Like, I want to protect it at all costs. That room resonates with me so much. And this film was pretty funny. I liked the humor that was inserted into the film here and there. Yorga had a couple of nice snarky one-liners at the beginning, and some of the things that the cops did throughout the film was funny too. Now, what are my 3 favorite parts of this movie? 1, Count Yorga speaks sign language. So there is an employee at the orphanage. I don't know if she's just mute or if she's deaf and mute. It's a little unclear, but she speaks in sign language, and Count Yorga speaks in sign language to her. Just like unprompted, because he just knows. And I just love it. It was just such a brief moment that is never revisited again. But I thought it was just so cool. Number 2, Jennifer beats a kid. Jennifer is one of the orphanage staff. She's the mute staff member. And she beats Peter, Tommy. She beats Tommy a couple times in the face. And it's just very satisfying because he deserved it, okay? Can I say that? And my 3rd favorite part, the cops. When they're in Count Yorga's castle, they approach the horde of female vampires. And they're like, we want to talk to you guys. Actually, it seems like a bad idea. It's just so goofy. And then they're like running away. And one of them's like, why are we running? And the other guy's like, 'cause we're scared. There are just a few more things that I wanted to mention here about Count Yorga. The Return of Count Yorga. Whereas part 1, I feel like it really took its time to build tension and build atmosphere. It seemed like part 2 wasn't quite sure what it wanted to focus on. It seemed like a smattering of too many different characters doing too many different things, while meanwhile we just forgot about Count Yorga in the basement. It definitely felt like a large part of this movie was people lost and running around inside of Count Yorga's castle. That's where the pacing really started to fall off for me. And like I mentioned, it's not really scary. It fails to be scary. Now, there are some scenes in part 1, especially that scene with Erica in her apartment, that just chill me to the bone, like every time, okay? But it's almost like part 2 just felt like this cat and mouse police game. In closing, I don't know why you guys love this one. I'm sorry. It feels uninspired and clunky. It does not do Count Yorga any justice. The film seemed to be lacking pizzazz, and so many parts were laid out for us that were never followed up on. So yeah, it felt disorganized. As I said in my initial review, I would not have given a crap about this movie if Robert QUARRY wasn't in it. Pretty much at every scene, I was like, I just want to change course just a little bit, and I feel like we could go somewhere good. Yeah, it just felt a little chaotic in a lot of ways, from who the main character was to where the story went, even to like the fact that Count Yorga is creating all these vampires and raising all these vampires from the dead, and then they're just running rampant and he's not doing anything with them. So who the hell said that Yorga 2 was better? Bitch, where?
Who the hell said that Bama do it better? Bitch, where?
According to Wikipedia, there was going to be a Yorga 3, but it did not pan pan out, which is sad because I would have watched that too. So yeah, I'm gonna keep watching this movie because it's part of the Yorga story, you know. But in my opinion, part 1 is just leaps and bounds more magical. I would love to hear from you. I'm so glad I could finally film this. It's one I've been wanting to film forever, and I actually already filmed it one time and just didn't do good. So this is my second attempt. Let me know if you've seen Yorga 2 and if you want to, and if you have seen it, what your thoughts are. I'm so glad that we could spend this time together, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.